Figured I would just make this video probably a little bit longer than most will be and kind of just give you guys sort of just like an introduction on who I am and just a background on how I got to where I am today and stuff like that. So thank you for tuning into this and spending your time watching and learning about my journey. I love to share it, and yeah, so I grew up in Massachusetts. I was born and raised there, and growing up I went to public schools and I played on plenty of different sports teams, and I had a bunch of different friends. We went to summer camp together and we went on vacations together, and I had it pretty good. I had a lot of fun. I loved the seasons. I loved snowboarding, playing ice hockey, and yeah, so I had a lot of fun growing up in Massachusetts, and looking back now, it's really interesting to see how my journey unfolded and brought me to where I am today. So yeah, growing up, I have always been the kind of person that loves to be around people. So even when I was little, my mom said I didn't like to play alone, and I always made her sleep by my side. And you know, when I outgrew that, I had my best friend sleeping over every night, and when I outgrew that, I had my boyfriend sleeping over every night. So I was always the type of person that almost seemed like I was not wanting to face myself. So, you know, when you spend that time alone and that stillness, you really have to allow those things that you buried deep down to kind of rise to the surface and heal. And I think that a lot of my upbringing, I didn't really put that together, and I was spending a lot of time around people, around friends, boyfriends, family, and not enough time just sitting with myself. And that caught up with me. You know, I went to college because I felt like I had to. You know, everyone goes to college, and you know, I remember graduating high school, everyone walks across the stage in front of thousands of people, and you know, they announce what your plan is to everyone. So they say what college you're going to go to, what you plan on studying, and everyone cheers for you. And you know, if you don't have those things to say, you almost feel like not successful, or like you're letting your friends and family down. So I always had this nurturing and healing energy to me. And a lot of the women in my life that I really looked up to, like my mom and my aunt, they were both nurses, so I always saw that as my path. It was a way to build a career around that passion I had for being a nurturer and being a healer. So for me, all through high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a nurse, you know, even though I really didn't vibe with science and with math and with those types of classes that you have to have those good grades in. You know, you have to excel in high school to be accepted into a good college program for nursing, and when that didn't happen for me, I was definitely let down. And you know, I still went through college, I just went undeclared, so basically I was just doing like general education classes and getting those out of the way for the first few years with kind of no direction, because I still had that passion for being a nurturer and a healer, but I didn't know how it was going to align with a career if I couldn't be a nurse and I couldn't feel like I was directly impacting people's well-being and stuff like that. So I was in college, and I hit a low, you know. I was in college and I was surrounded by partying and unhealthy habits, unhealthy food, and kind of just a sense of mindlessness that really brought me kind of just a sense of confusion. You know, I had no idea which direction I wanted to go in, but I knew that what I was doing didn't feel right. It didn't feel aligned with my highest self, and I knew that I could do more. And I started having these really vivid dreams. I started having dreams of like going on adventures and exploring the world. And I remember talking about it. I remember going to sleep was my escape. I loved sleeping. I loved sleeping late, and like sleeping late into the day and just enjoying those dreams as if they were my reality, as if they were my safe space and kind of my inspiration. So that was kind of where my subconscious mind started to flow through me in a more consistent way. And I think that really triggered my intuition to kind of return, because growing up, playing on all those sports teams and being in high school and middle school with all those kids, you don't have that sense of individuality, of independence, and that intuitive draw that you would if you had been in a more authentic space. Say if you were homeschooled, or you felt more independent as an individual. I feel like that is what I was really craving on the inside, but I wouldn't ever give myself that time to dive in to myself in the way that I really needed to. And my relationship with my boyfriend at the time was awesome. I started dating him at 14, and we stayed together up until I was 20 years old, and we had a lot of fun. We grew up by each other's sides, we were best friends, and I don't regret that. But all of that time, those 6 years that I spent with him by my side, always kind of having my world revolve around the two of us as opposed to just having it revolve around myself, that was starting to show, because I didn't really have a sense of who I was. I wasn't sure exactly what I needed to have to fill that void, or have that sense of inner peace and inner knowing. So yeah, when I was 19, I started looking into other colleges, and I kind of was just dreaming when I applied to this college in Hawaii that I ended up getting accepted to. And I think that was my way of subconsciously getting the support from my friends and family to make this major change in my life, because it was to go to school. I think that society today, especially where I grew up on the East Coast, everyone's super competitive and super driven in their careers, and they really value education, which is a beautiful thing. But for me, I felt like, I think subconsciously, that I wasn't going to get that support to make such a drastic change in my life from my boyfriend, from my mom and dad, from my friends, if I didn't have that as the reason, chasing after an education, because that's what everyone wants to see you do right out of high school for some reason. So yeah, I was a sophomore in college in Massachusetts, and I was hitting my lows. I was really disconnected within myself, and it was showing in all of my relationships, my parents, my brother, my boyfriend, my friends. It was just, there was a huge disconnect and a huge sense of I don't know the word for it, but I guess I was losing that value in those relationships, and it was because I had lost that value of that relationship within me and with myself. So I was 19 when I applied to that college, and I got accepted, and I went back and forth, and I knew that it was going to be the scariest thing I ever did, leaving home all by myself and leaving all sense of connection and foundation for kind of this dream of mine that seemed so out there, I didn't know anyone from my school that I went to high school with that even went to the West Coast for college. Everyone kind of stuck around, and so this was I didn't really have a role model, you could say. I was kind of really just winging it. I was seeing these girls on Instagram on the beaches in Hawaii, and they just seemed so happy, and they radiated, they had this radiant presence that I really desired. And so I made the decision that I was going to go to Hawaii. And at that point, it was, the summer of 2016, yeah. And I had just turned 20, and I had my, kind of sick, but I had my flight booked for that, oh my god, sorry. So I had my flight booked for that August to fly out to Oahu all on my own and start college. I was planning on studying hospitality and tourism management or something like that, because I knew I had an interest in bringing fulfillment to people. So I love to like the idea of traveling. I didn't really do a ton of it growing up, like international travel or anything like that, but I loved the idea of it, and I loved the idea of helping other people get to the point where they're traveling and they're having their dreams come true. So that was what I was going to study, and I was supposed to fly out August 18th, 2016, and I was scared. I was so scared. Sorry, I'm going to get some water because this is crazy. But yeah, so I ended up last minute backing out of my flight. I remember I was hugging my mom and I was hugging my boyfriend. And I was like, how am I gonna live without these people by my side? You know, and I told them I'm not ready. So I ended up missing my flight that day. And I gave myself one more week. So it's not that I decided not to go. It's just that I decided that I wasn't ready yet. So I spent that last week kind of just talking it up, and I was like, I got this. Maybe it's not a good idea to start school right away because I didn't have a car there and I was going to have to work full time to support myself. So it just seemed like a lot to move to a new place and within that week start going to school full time, start a job full time without really knowing anyone or even knowing my way around. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a semester off, which was like the first time since preschool or kindergarten that I had time to myself, like true, authentic time to myself. So I flew to Hawaii on August 25th, 2016, all on my own. I had my one-way ticket and I flew 5,000 miles from home, and I got there and I was stoked. It definitely took me some time to transition and to be fully comfortable, but you know, it got to the point where I started to see the value in having less distraction around me. So I always felt like I had to do what everyone else was doing to fit in or to, you know, I guess to be cool. I don't really know. So this was the first time that I really embarked on my own journey, and I was being a little selfish, you know. I was exploring different sides of myself and I needed to figure things out for myself, and for that reason, me and my boyfriend, you know, we kind of split up. It wasn't my intention to split up forever. I just knew that I needed to give myself that full attention that I hadn't ever really given myself ever as an adult my entire life. So when I gave myself that space and I finally was still within myself and I didn't have friends around, you know, I didn't really have anybody, I was really able to tune into myself in such an authentic way that it really filled that void for me. You know, I started learning more about how important it was to nurture ourselves with food that aligns with us. You know, in college I was eating Wendy's every night because that's all I could afford. And when I moved to Hawaii, I started eating all the local produce. I started eating plant-based, and that in itself was a huge transition for me because I never even considered that an option growing up, you know. We're so used to eating the standard American diet, and even today, I don't think my parents fully understand that this is for life. Even just the other day, my dad called me, he's like, why don't you have a hard-boiled egg? And I was like, Dad, because like this is who I am, you know. So yeah, it felt really good to make that decision for myself, you know. And what you're nurturing yourself with truly is a huge reflection on what you're thinking and your actions and, you know, the relationships that you're building. Because if you're nurturing yourself coming from a place of mindfulness and coming from a place of love and compassion, then it's going to be a lot easier to nurture your relationships in that way and nurture your thoughts in that way as well. So for me, that was huge, and I started doing yoga more consistently and realizing the power of stillness and challenging myself physically and kind of keeping up a consistent routine on something that I just enjoyed, not something I felt obligated